put out the flame anyway. A flame of today is the sun of tomorrow. Happy Teachers' Day. A graceful and warm good afternoon to our most valid guest, Honorable President Sir, Secretary and Director Madam, respected Principal, Dean, Dean Academics, beloved teachers, and Management Committee. Last but not the least, all gathered over here. On behalf of Department of Botany, Kongunad Arts and Science College, and the entire fraternity of the college, let me warmly welcome all of you to the fifth day section of the short-term course in biodiversity, status, services, and management practices, organized by the Department of Botany, PG Diploma in Biodiversity, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, Coimbatore. Before I start my welcome remark, I would like to take this chance to thank our Honorable Secretary and Director, Dr. C.A. Vasugi Madam, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, for giving us permission and providing all facilities to conduct this program, and also her guidance, moral support, and encouragement words. It's not just string of words, but it will be a powerful motivation speech. They not only help us grow us, also strengthen our creativity and knowledge. And also, I would like to thank all the guest speakers for accepting our invitation and spending their valuable time with us. And I would like to welcome our guest speaker today. A long bending desire has been fulfilled today with the presence of Dr. G. A. Divagaran sir, Director, Blue Bay Coastal Research Foundation, Chennai, in our midst. I proudly welcome you, sir, into this function. If your actions create a legacy that inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are an excellent leader. It's my pleasure to extend a cordial welcome to our Honorable Secretary and Director, Dr. C.A. Vasugi Madam, Kongunadu Arts and Science College. Dearest ma'am, I welcome you in my humble words to this most prestigious program. I would like to extend a warm welcome to beloved and respected Principal Dr. M. Lakshmanaswamy sir and Dean Academics Dr. S. Madan Sankar sir, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, to this program. I extend my agreeable welcome to Dr. S. Palsamy sir, Dean R&D, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, and also I convey my sincere thanks to Dr. S. Palsamy sir for his minute-to-minute support and guidance for encouraging at every point of time in the organization of this great event. The next one I would like to welcome to this program is the former principal and dean academics and former HOD of the Botany Department, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, who need not to be an accusator to the members and well-wishers of our department. I bided a hearty welcome to Dr. V. Balasubramaniam sir and Dr. N. Nagarajan sir. I would like to extend a warm welcome to beloved and respected Dr. K. Tenmoli Madam, Assistant Professor and Head of the Department of Botany, to this function. Next, I extend my hearty welcome to Organizing Secretary Dr. K. Kartiga Ma'am, Coordinators Dr. D. Murthy Sir and Dr. P. Revati Ma'am, Assistant Professors of Botany, and Organizing Committee members of Botany Department, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, for their logistic support towards organizing this event. Finally, I extend my cheerful welcome to all the participants who have constantly extended their support, the high cooperation to all high prospects of this program. It is a great honor for me to introduce our today resource person, Dr. G. Divagaran sir, Director, Blue Bay Coastal Research Foundation, Chennai. Dr. G. Divagaran sir is presently working as Director of Blue Bay Research Foundation, Chennai. Previously, He has worked as Chief Principal, Scientist and Head, Coastal and Marine Ecology Division, Gujarat Institute of Desert Ecology, Gujarat. He has passed his MSc, MPhil, and PhD in the Center of Advanced Studies in Marine Biology, Annamalai University in 1982, 1984, and 1989, respectively. He also completed his postdoctoral studies in marine ecology at Woods Hole Marine Biology Station, USA, for 1 year during 1990. He has passed national educational tests. He has joined as CSIR Research Associate in Tamil University, Tanjavur from September 1989 to February 1995. He then worked at CSIR Senior Research Associate at Salimali Center of Oceanology and Natural History from April 1995 to February 1997, and subsequently got elevated as scientist, senior scientist, and project in charge for all marine projects in Gujarat Institute of Desert Ecology from February 1998 to April 2019. He is expertised in coastal restoration ecology, mangrove and intertidal ecology, marine environmental impact assessment, and marine monitoring studies. He has 31 years of research experience in marine ecology. He has guided 6 PhD scholars and 2 are presently pursuing PhD. He has published more than 100 research papers in reputed national and international journals. He also serving editor for the Institute newsletter, Guide newsletter. Today, we are privileged to have an opportunity to listen to him this afternoon. On behalf of all gathered here, I welcome you, sir, to this short-term course in biodiversity, status, services, and management practices. Also requesting to deliver the lecture on coastal and marine biodiversity of Gujarat. Once again, I welcome you all for this short-term course in biodiversity, status, services, and management practices organized by the Department of Botany, PG Diploma in Biodiversity, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, Coimbatore. If you cannot fly, then run. If you cannot run, then walk. If you cannot walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, I think I can start now. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You're audible, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I start now?
Sir, you can start now, sir. You can start.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for a very exhaustive introduction about me. And it is really a pleasure that I have been invited to this webinar. And I must be thankful to the management of Kongunadu Arts and Science College, the correspondent, director, secretary, and organizers of this webinar. Today, let me present a very few basic facts about coastal and marine biodiversity of Gujarat. Though it is all presented in the context of Gujarat, majority of the facts, majority of the things I'm going to present is applicable at global, regional, national level. So it is not that only certain points which are of interest to Gujarat will be highlighted in this discussion. Thank you very much. Please, next slide. So it is, let us start with a very basic definition of what is biodiversity. Biodiversity, as you all know, since the audience is a very learned faculties and research students, maybe it is all redundant to them, but anyway, we will start with the basics. Biodiversity, as you all quite aware, is the variety and variability of life. So it is synonymous with life, and without biodiversity, there is no life on Earth. It is the variety and difference among living organisms from all sources, including terrestrial, marine, and other aquatic ecosystems. This is the definition given by Convention on Biological Diversity 1992, but somewhat more exhaustive definitions have been put forth by many authors. So in short, it is nothing but variety and variability of life on Earth, both plants and animals. It is totality of genes, species, and ecosystem in a region. And today's biodiversity on Earth consists of millions of distinct biological species, which is product of nearly 3.5 million years of evolution. So it is all hypothesized. Life first formed in some hydrothermal vents, the deep waters of Marianas Trench, some 4.3 billion years ago in the Marianas Trench near Philippines. But since then, life has been evolving, and whatever see the millions and millions of diverse species we see today, both plants and animals, is the result of 3.5 or 4 billion years of evolution by nature. Next. So let us have a look on different kinds of biodiversity. Again, it is all a redundancy to you all, but anyway, we will have some very basic recollection of what is biodiversity, what different types of biodiversity are there. Genetic diversity, as you all know, it is variation in the amount of genetic information within and among individuals of population, species, assemblage, or community. Population and species. Many of you must be aware that nature has only population. It is the species, genus, family, order, and all our creation. Population, if you see, it is the basic unit of nature. It is the basic unit of biodiversity. So, if you see genetic diversity, it is the amount of genetic information, genetic material that varies among population, species, among and between population, species, and community. Species diversity, if you see species diversity, we use species diversity as the index of biodiversity. It is the most common way of representing biodiversity. Species diversity combines two elements, species richness and evenness. How many species are there and how many individuals are there in a species? Okay. Community and ecosystem diversity is more important because it is the mega unit of biodiversity. Ecosystem diversity is the variation of collection of assemblages within a community. It is often called alpha diversity, and sometimes beta diversity is also used. Beta diversity is nothing but diversity of habitats over total landscape or geographical area. So these are all different types of, there are another kinds of diversity. Is there another 3 or 4 different kinds of diversity? Please next slide. We have another compositional diversity, structural diversity, functional diversity. These are all different ways in which biodiversity can be expressed. So compositional diversity is nothing but types of diversity elements at all levels. That is genes, species, habitats level. It is called compositional diversity. It is the genetic composition of population, relative abundance of a species in a community and habitat and communities in a landscape. Structural diversity is nothing but habitats, genes, and species, how they are arranged in over space and time. Sometimes it is called as spatial diversity, temporal diversity. Functional diversity. Functional diversity is very important because many of the resources, many of the services we get marine and coastal ecosystem, it is closely related to functional diversity. Functional diversity is the variety of biological processes, functions, and characteristics of a particular ecosystem and an area. It indicates the huge variety of process and interactions among different species and with the physical environment. The process can be geological, hydrological, climatic, ecological, and which are continuously influenced by processes like nutrient cycling, predation, parasitism, and other things. Okay, these are all very basic units of biodiversity. I think the earlier speakers, they have highlighted it. Okay, let us go to the next slide. Marine ecosystem, as you all are quite aware, that life was formed in the marine ecosystem. So marine ecosystem can be called as the cradle of biodiversity. It is the hotspot of biodiversity. A wealth of biodiversity exists in marine environment as a result of millions of years of evolution. As I said, the first life formed on the marine environment, and from intertidal, subtidal to intertidal, then it invaded the terrestrial environment. The first life, it is hypothesized, it forms nearly 4.35 billion years ago, the hydrothermal vents of the deepest part of the oceans. Hydrothermal vents are nothing but fissures in the sea floor, ocean floor, through which very hot water emerges. It harbors lot many microbes, bacteria, and other organisms. If you take marine environment, all phyla except one, Onychophora, it is present in the marine environment. And half of this phyla, there are about 35 to 37 phyla, half of this phyla are exclusively marine. They don't present on the terrestrial environment. 15 phyla are exclusively marine, I think. Consequently, marine organisms display a much larger phyletic diversity than what is found on the terrestrial side. Ocean creatures contain a diversity of survival strategies. That is where the functional diversity comes. For example, the prey-predator relationship in the ocean environment is much stronger, and it is yet to be studied very thoroughly. It leads to a lot of other functional diversity, lot of biochemical substances are produced. For example, a particular type of organism, it produces an input to escape from its predator. That leads to a kind of functional diversity. So ocean creatures contain a diversity of survival strategies that leads to a lot of functional diversity. It is possible that marine environment has not only high phyletic diversity but great functional diversity. As I said, a great deal of research is required in this aspect, and it is really surprising to know that among marine organisms, only 9% is known and 91% is not yet known. I think in the terrestrial side, it is slightly better. Around 20% of the terrestrial diversity is known to scientists. Only around 80% is yet to be explored, is yet to be brought to the our attention. Okay, next slide. So if you see the history of marine biodiversity studies in India, it all started during British period, as we all know very well, and 3 ocean expeditions. That was the first attempt to throw light on marine biodiversity in India. That was RIMS Investigator and another RIMS Investigator 2, HEMS Babahis. These 3 ocean-going vessels, these 3 vessels were purely dedicated for the research of ocean biodiversity. That was during earlier part of 19th century, I think. So English people, British people, they were the first people to start exploring the marine biodiversity, and all the specimens collected were catalogued and recorded and kept in the British Museum, as it is the customary. It is the habit of British scientists in those days. And other than these 3 investigations, other great oceanographic expeditions in the Indian Ocean was conducted, like the British Challenger expedition, the German expedition, the Dutch expedition, the HMS Investigator, John Murray expedition, Dana, Galathea expeditions, and so many other expeditions. But very important thing is after independence, there was a series of expedition was conducted called the International Indian Ocean Expedition between 1989 to 65. Lot many countries participated in this expedition and lot many new species. Nearly 50% of the species known to us in Indian waters were brought to light by these Indian Ocean expeditions, the International Indian Ocean Expedition. Many countries participated in this expedition, including India. That was the time the National Institute of Oceanography was first started. Some scientists from NIO, National Institute of Oceanography, they also participated in this International Indian Ocean Expedition. If you see the contributors in this expeditions, all are British people and people like Dr. Panikkar. He was prominent from Indian side as a major contributor. Please next. If you in Gujarat context, I think Gujarat was in the forefront to initiate marine biodiversity studies, all because of the King of Baroda, on Gaikwad, Maharaja Gaikwad of Baroda. He called a British scientist called James Horner in the year 1909. James Horner at that time he was working as superintendent zoological museum, Chennai. He was called by the King of Baroda to Gujarat and asked to conduct a study in the Okkamandal coast, that is the present-day coastal region of Gujarat. So all pre-independence marine survey and cataloging, as usual, was done by British scientists, and the specimens were catalogued in all foreign museums. The first biodiversity research in Gujarat was started by James Horner in the year 1909, and he came out with a treatise called Marine Zoology of Okkamandal Coast in Kathiawar. Kathiawar is a major coastline of Gujarat. And following that, in 1915 and 16, a British scientist called Dandy, he studied very extensively on the calcareous and non-calcareous sponges of Okkamandal Coast. Okkamandal Coast, just like Coromandel Coast, Okkamandal Coast is a part of coastline of Gujarat. And he brought out many volumes on the sponges of Gujarat. Similarly, the work carried out by Dr. Day in the year 1889, I think it was the first work on fishes of India. He came out with fishes of India and Ceylon. It is still being used by fishery scientists. It is just like a Bible. And following this International Indian Ocean Expedition, as I said, between 1960 and 65, laid the foundation for modern scientific research in marine biodiversity at the institutional level in the Indian Ocean. Two institutes, Botanical Survey of India and Zoological Survey of India, started by British people. I think Zoological Survey of India was started in the year 1916, and Botanical Survey of India was started much earlier, 1889 or 1890, I think. Botanical Survey of India was earlier functioning as a part of office of the Botanical Garden of Calcutta, which was later elevated to the level of an institute called Botanical Survey of India. Their contribution during pre-independence and post-independence period to the biodiversity of the country is enormous, really. Next, please. So the question comes, why we should study biodiversity, what is the use, and as I said, biodiversity is the basis for all the life on Earth. Without biodiversity, there is no life on Earth. Understanding marine biodiversity has innate importance, and it has its own value. If one considers how long life on Earth existing it is nearly about 3 million years. If you go back still further to the microorganism, it is estimated, hypothesized, around 4 million billion years ago. It is apparent that Earth has been working on the present day biodiversity for quite a long time. So whatever we see today is the work, the outcome of nearly 4 billion years of nature's activity. But one very disturbing thing is many of the organisms, especially in marine environment and equally in terrestrial environment, many of the organisms are getting extinct before it is all recorded by us. So it is very disturbing, and the present day anthropogenic activities like pollution, climate change, global warming, it is exacerbating the activity of humans, and it is the disappearance and extinction of many species. It is becoming fast. So importance of marine biodiversity falls in few categories like adaptation, food, raw material. Raw material is especially very important because it is all predicted, it is all hypothesized that in another 50 years, nearly 60 to 70% of the human requirement, let it be food or medicine or living space or whatever, it will all be met from the oceans. The aquaculture, the way aquaculture is expanding, it will replace or it will equally be important to agriculture. The same way, not many research is going on to cultivate many of the crops in saline water. So considering all these factors, ocean as a raw material and the biodiversity of the ocean as a supplier of raw material, as a supplier of food, drug, and other things, it is very important. And as you know, climate change is ocean systems, the physical oceanography and the physical activities in the ocean, it is a major contributor to control, to regulate climate change on the earth. And above all, the knowledge of all these things is very important, and it is humankind is in a very very urgent requirement to gather very good knowledge about all the biodiversity of the oceans. Next slide, please. Next slide. How diverse is life in the ocean? As I said, life in the ocean is the result of millions of years of evolution, and it is yet to be unraveled fully. Oceans are sampled very sparsely, less than 20%. Even that 20% of the most of the studies, most of the biodiversity knowledge comes from near coastal environment, maybe in the continental shelf, what they call, that is around within 100 kilometers from the coastline. So all our knowledge comes from within the continental shelf, 100 kilometers from the coastal shelf. The rest, as you know, Earth covers nearly 71% of the Earth's surface. The ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and majority of the ocean, nearly 90% of the ocean still remains unexplored. Our knowledge on marine biological diversity is incipient and rudimentary. I think it is exactly conveys what is our present knowledge. What we know is very little. It is estimated there are around 3 to 10 million species in the ocean, and another estimate says it should be only around 2.2 million life forms in the ocean. Many of the life forms became extinct before they are known. The worms, World Registry of Marine Species, it says it has recorded only around 2.2 lakh species from seaweeds to blue whales. So the knowledge, what I want to say is the knowledge of marine and ocean coastal diversity is very sparse, rudimentary, and very basic. in India, as per Indian context, if you see only around 15,000 species are known from the marine environment. And possibility for more species is that as I said, it is 91% marine environment is yet to be described further. Next. Next. If you consider the ecosystem diversity, marine ecosystem diversity of Gujarat, and here I want to draw a comparison between the southern coastal belt of southern states, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, and with that of Gujarat. The ecosystem diversity at landscape level and ecosystem level, the diversity of Gujarat seems to be much higher. But the species diversity seems to be lesser. That is because of physical environment. We'll come to that later. So the Gujarat coast is endowed with a very rich habitat diversity: corals, mangroves, sand dunes, muddy, rocky, sandy coast, creeks, etching systems, and only ecosystem or habitat that is absent is lagoons. Coral ecosystem is around 150 square kilometers. Mangrove ecosystem, it is second largest in India. It is around 1,177 square kilometers. Intertidal ecosystem around 83 square kilometers. 63 different kinds of estuaries. 11 estuaries are medium in nature, and the major estuaries is Narmada, Tapi, Narmada, and Satrunji are the major estuaries, and lot many minor estuaries are there because the west flowing rivers are plenty in Gujarat. Numerous creek systems, each with its own ecological peculiarities. Wide climatological variations, because if you see South Gujarat and North Gujarat, climatologically it is entirely different, because North Gujarat, it records the lowest temperature of 0 degrees centigrade in winter, whereas in South Gujarat, temperature fall doesn't go that much. And similarly, there are two major Gulf systems. In India, there are 3 Gulf systems: Gulf of Mannar, Gulf of Kutch, and Kampath. Out of the 2 Gulf systems, Kutch and Kampath, it is present in Gujarat. And these Gulf systems, they are ecologically very, very peculiar. For example, Gulf of Kampath, it has the highest tidal amplitude, and it is biologically very rich. Tidal amplitude to the tune of 12 to 13 meters. It is the second largest tidal amplitude in the world. Tidal amplitude is nothing but the tidal height. You know, for every 6 hours, water comes and is seeps back in the seas. So to what extent the water rises in the ocean in each tide is called tidal amplitude. It is the second largest in the world in Gulf of Kampath, and water rises, each tide rises to the maximum level of 12 to 13 meters in Gulf of Kampath. It produces a lot of so many ecological peculiarities in the Gulf systems, especially in Gulf of Kampath. Gulf of Kutch, again, it is ecologically very peculiar. I'll say peculiar because it is an arid zone, a semi-arid zone. Rainfall is very less, and it has the highest mangrove extent in the west coast of India. It has around 1,000 square kilometers of mangrove, comparing Tamil Nadu's mangrove extent of around 50 square kilometers in Pichavaram and other areas. So both this Gulf system, they are the repository for highest level of ecosystem diversity, habitat diversity, and species and population diversity. Next, please. Yeah, it again highlights, this slide again highlights what are all the different kinds of ecosystem and habitat diversity, some factors, some facts about Gujarat has the highest coastal length in the whole of the country among different maritime states of India. It has the longest coastal length of 1,663 kilometers, and the continental shelf. Continental shelf is nothing but to the extent the land recedes into the sea, and then the fall will be sudden. So that determines to what extent the continent itself supports biodiversity. And again, exclusive economic zone EEZ, it has around 2 lakh square kilometers. 2 Gulf systems are present. And again, the wetlands, coastal as well as inland wetlands, it is the highest in among the coastal states of India. It is around 25,000 square kilometers. And mangrove, again, it is second largest mangrove formation is present in Gujarat. It is about 1,177 square kilometer. Corals are around 1,050 square kilometer. Mudflats is again a major ecosystem. It supports a lot of intertidal and subtidal organisms. It supports a lot of avifauna. The rich avifauna of Gujarat is attributable to the vast extent of mudflats. Around 21,913 square kilometers of mudflats. I think again it is the second largest mudflat extent in the whole of India, the maritime states of India. Sandy beaches, comparing Tamil Nadu and other states, it is less because majority of the coastal belt of Gujarat is mudflats, rocky formations, gulf systems, creek systems. So the sandy beaches are very less, only around out of 1,663 square kilometers, sandy beaches is only around 100 square kilometers. Salt marshes, it is again around 1,000 square kilometers. Rocky Shore, it is 20 square kilometers. Salt pans, many of you must be aware that Gujarat is the number one in salt production. It produces and exports a very huge, very high quantity of salt. So salt pans is around 4,415 square kilometers. So what I want to say in this slide is the ecosystem and the habitat diversity of Gujarat is unparalleled. It is the highest among the maritime states of the country. Next slide. Next slide. So this slide highlights and compares some of the coastal and marine biodiversity of Gujarat, India, and at a global level. Gujarat, Indian, and global inventory of marine biodiversity. The comparison. If you see, around 2 lakh something species are known at the world level. At Indian scenario, our knowledge is restricted to 15,000 species. In Gujarat, it is only around 10% of the national average. Comparing international average, it should be very, very less. Only around 10% of what is known at the national level is known at the state level of Gujarat. And many of the, if you see, many of the groups, no information is available on many of the major groups. Of course, information on groups like Arthropoda, it is good. Coelenterata, it is good. Echinodermata, somewhat better. Mollusk, very good. Mammals, okay. Reptiles, it is well known. And plantae, among plant kingdom, okay, somewhat better. Diatoms are even diatom, only 62 diatoms are reported, marine diatoms. Dinoflagellates are still lesser. If you see macroalgae, seaweeds, at Indian level, 844 species are reported. At Gujarat, only around 210 species are known. Mangroves, 11 species are known out of Indian record of 39 species. So, I think I don't know what is the case with Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu should be slightly better because many of the marine related institutes, they are functioning in Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So the knowledge and the record of biodiversity, marine biodiversity should be slightly better in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka and Kerala. So what I want to drive, the point I want to drive home in this slide is biodiversity recording in the marine environment in Gujarat as well as at the Indian scenario, it is all very poor. What is the reason? We will see in the next slide. Next slide, please. Present marine biodiversity inventory is quite incomplete. That is what we have seen. Only around 10% of the national biodiversity is known at international level. Our record of biodiversity is very poor at national level. 15,000, around 15,000 species are described so far. At the Gujarat level, it is around 1,500 only. But one thing is, comparing other neighboring states in South Asia and Southeast Asia, our record, the Indian record of marine biodiversity is much better. That is what literature says. Because if you if you consider even China, Philippines, Vietnam, Taiwan, Malaysia, Indonesia, our record of marine biodiversity is much better. Corals and mangroves attract increased attention. This is another major factor. It is all highlighted in every seminar, symposium, and get together in biodiversity. Only certain groups, they attract the attention of researchers. Certain groups, the biodiversity reporting in certain groups are much better than other groups. For example, major groups like fishes, crustaceans, mollusks, avifauna, mammals are better described, and majority of the researchers working on biodiversity, they concentrate in this aspect. Major phyla groups like Ketanax, minor phyla, Ketanax, Tintinids, Platyhelminths, Echura, Chinorhyncha are very poorly described, and they are not described at all. Fishes are well described because they are very important commercially and economically. And species like seagrasses, macroalgae, seaweeds, mollusks, corals are comparatively better described because they are well studied. Many researchers, they show interest. Considering all these things, why this lopsided interest in the reporting of biodiversity? The factor that could be reasons for this lopsided reporting is first is commercial and economic significance. Fishes are commercially important, so they are well studied. Almost all species are well reported. Mollusks, they are equally commercially important. They are important. Arthropods, they are equally important. They are well studied. Habitat accessibility. Intertidal and subtidal regions are accessible to humans, accessible to us. Even with a boat, we can study the subtidal. Even without a boat, we can study intertidal zone. So it is accessibility that again determines the number of reporting of species. Sometimes their ecological significance and surprisingly the organism size. Organism size, it is equally applicable in terrestrial environment because elephants, tigers, and lions are much well studied comparing other minor phyla, minor organisms. So what is known, this is applicable to ecosystems and habitats also. Many ecosystems like estuaries, lagoons, creek systems, intertidal habitats, subtidal habitats, they are not all well studied because so much of this diversity of ecosystems, especially in South India, throughout the Indian coast. India has a coastline of around 7,000 kilometers, and it exhibits so much of ecosystem diversity, habitat diversity, and even niche diversity. But the studies on this is very less. That could be a major reason why India, comparing other Western countries, we are reporting very less number of marine species. The biodiversity reporting is very less. For example, on terrestrial side, Western Ghats, description of species in Western Ghats should be much higher than other areas. The same in marine environment. Offshore environment, marine environment, the deeper part of the ocean, they are very poorly studied and reported. Whereas intertidal habitat and subtidal habitat, which are very close and which are easily accessible even by a boat, are well reported. Okay, please, next slide. So what are the threats to coastal and marine biodiversity? This threat, I think it is common to terrestrial biodiversity also. Ports, development of ports, especially if you see Gujarat, Gujarat, as you all aware, Gujarat is called economic engine of the country. It leads in economic development. So there are around the airports and seaports in Gujarat is the largest, highest in number, comparing any other states in the country. So there are around 41 different kinds of ports in Gujarat, coastal, uh, handling an assortment of material. And one report says nearly 70% of the crude oil requirement of the country is handled by Gujarat port. That too alone in Gulf of Kutch. Gulf of Kutch, it handles nearly 60 to 70% of the crude oil requirement of the country. Only one major spill will destroy the second largest mangroves, the second largest coral ecosystem of the country in Jamnagar area. So that is how it threats the marine and coastal biodiversity activities of ports. Urbanization. Again, the rate of urbanization in Gujarat is highest, especially the migration from interior region to the coastal urban area. It is very, very intense in Gujarat. Salt works. Gujarat is the highest, largest salt producer in the country, and as a result, salt works occupy a major part of the coastline. Thermal power stations. Again, Gujarat has the largest number of coastal thermal power stations. In Kutch district alone, there are nearly 14 thermal power stations. Each one is mega. Nearly each one, if you take 4,500 megawatts. That much of thermal power station, it is not in one district. Thermal power station number, it is not there in Tamil Nadu. Near coastal mines, mining activities also very intense. Aquaculture, as you know, next to Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, and Tamil Nadu, Gujarat leads in aquaculture development. Nearly around 6,000 hectares are under aquaculture. It leads to very huge coastal habitat fragmentation. The next one is cement industries. Cement industries, what is happening because of the proximity of Gulf countries? Gulf countries just few hours sea travel from Gujarat ports. Not many cement industries have come up in the coastal belt because cement can be produced, the clinker can be exported, which will reach Gulf countries within few hours. So almost all cement factories, if you see Gujarat, it is all located in the coastal belt. Nuclear power stations. Again, there are two major nuclear power stations in Gujarat, in South Gujarat, near Surat. Food processing is a major industry, and chemicals, rubber, dye, petrochemicals, pharma. As you know, pharma, Gujarat is the major pharma producer. Nearly 70% of the country's pharma requirement is supplied by Gujarat, and majority of these pharma industries, they are located in the coastal belt. Climate change. Climate change, especially sea level rise and global warming. Sea level rise, if you see, Gujarat is likely to face nearly around at the rate of maximum 1 millimeter rise per year sea level. So by the year 2100, majority of the coastal belt, that is around 80% of the mangroves, 70% of the corals, sandy beaches, not lagoons, creek systems, estuaries, they'll be affected, and their biodiversity will be affected by climate change, especially global warming, especially sea level rise. Next slide, please. I think I have to rush fast because I'm approaching. So this map shows the location of ports in Gujarat, and Gujarat, especially if you see Gulf of Kutch, it has some major ports like Kandla Port, and that is now called Deen Dayal Port, and Adani Port, and other major port here. The Gulf of Kampath belt, it is called Golden Triangle because it has the largest concentration of chemical pharma industries in the country. Gulf of Kampath, the tail end of Gulf of Kampath. Next slide. So this it's a process. It's a kind of activity in the coastal belt that poses a major threat to coastal and marine biodiversity. This small structure is called SBM, single buoy mooring. What is happening in certain ports? They cannot accommodate, they cannot berth very large ship, very large ship. It is called VVLC, very large ship. So in that case, instead of deepening the port, they use this small structure called single buoy mooring, SBM. The ship will come anchor around 20 kilometers offshore, and it will be connected through the storage structure, crude oil storage structure in the shore through this device, single buoy mooring. What is happening? Why we are interested as a marine ecologist? Why we are interested? In the process of transferring crude oil, lot many spillage happens. That pose a major threat to coastal marine biodiversity. Yes, I think this is enough. Next. This is a closer view of single buoy mooring. Next slide, please. So developmental activities, how do they, coastal developmental activities, how do they impact biodiversity? Petroleum hydrocarbons, it leads to mortality of corals. Very often, the spillage of petroleum hydrocarbons, crude oils and everything, it will be chronic in nature, not necessarily very acute and sudden. So even a chronic release of petroleum, as I said earlier slides, the single buoy mooring will keep on releasing certain amount of petroleum hydrocarbons while transferring them to the onshore storage structures. In this process, the chronic release of petroleum hydrocarbon and crude oil, it leads to mortality of corals, mangroves, avifauna, etc. Plastic. Now, not many people are working on microplastics, and it leads to, and plastic, especially the plastic nets used by fishermen and other people. It leads to entanglement of animals, and it leads to, it poses aesthetic problem. Pesticides, it is creates impact through acute toxicity, sewage, eutrophication, altered community structure, pathogens, heavy metals, sublethal effects on growth abnormality, thermal effluents, especially from thermal power stations and nuclear power stations. What is happening in nuclear and thermal power stations located in the coastal belt? They have to take large amount of water for their coolant system, millions of gallons of water per day, and the water taken is used to cool the system, and the heated water is released into the ocean environment, in the near coastal environment. That leads to elevated temperature. This elevated temperature leads to altered community structure and species elimination sometimes. Bilge and ballast water from the ship. So yesterday, some speakers, especially Dr. Rajshekharan, I think, was talking about how ballast water impacts native species, and it leads to the extinction and decline of native species. Brine from salt ports and spillage from SBM, single buoy mooring or single point mooring. Sometimes it is called SPM or SBM. Inland mining is also a major threat. Okay, next slide. I think I am approaching my time. Okay. Along shipbreaking yard is the world's largest shipbreaking yard, and it breaks nearly 300 to 400 ships per year, and all kinds of ships, nuclear ships, chemical, crude oil ships, liquid cargo ships, solid cargo ships, all ships of all variety, army ships and navy ships, everything is broken here because Western countries, they don't want to have shipbreaking industry in their country, in their coastal belt, because it is highly polluting. It is so polluting that the coastal belt in a radius of 50 kilometers will not have any life. So this is the impact of along shipbreaking or near Bhavnagar. So many heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, chromium, mercury, and aromatic hydrocarbons, it is all released very continuously. And as a result, you will not find any marine life the subtidal or intertidal belt along in the near waters of along breaking out. Next. Next slide, please. So this is another major civil engineering activity Gujarat government is planning, and if it, the construction activity has already started, and they claim it is going to be one of the first maritime civil engineering feat in the world. What they are planning to close a part of Gulf of Kampath. That is the tail end of Gulf of Kampath. Here you can see here will be closed by a dam. Though this part of the Gulf, that is end of the Gulf, will become freshwater. It will become freshwater because there are so many rivers flowing in this Gulf, in this part of Gulf. River like Narmada, Tapti, Satranji, and nearly 7 major rivers. They are emptying this part of the Gulf of Kampath. Once that is done, it will become a major freshwater lake. The marine biodiversity here will totally disappear, and the system will start functioning in a different way. If you convert a major marine ecosystem into a terrestrial or aquatic freshwater ecosystem, you can imagine the consequences, because there are many opposition to the to this activity, because people at world level, national level, at state level, they are all opposing this project. But this project has already started. The government is determined to complete this project in another 15 to 20 years. But once completed, they claim that this lake will supply electricity and fresh water to Gujarat, part of Maharashtra, whole of Madhya Pradesh, and part of Rajasthan. I don't know to what extent it is true. But the whole mangroves, the whole marine ecosystem here will disappear. It will, I don't know how the system will behave once a freshwater or marine ecosystem is converted into a totally freshwater ecosystem. Next. Next. Again, the question arises. I'm sorry, can I take another 10 minutes more? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can take,
I'll
sir.
complete it in another 5 minutes.
Yeah, sure, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
What is the reason why very less number of marine species are recorded in the coastal marine area, marine ecosystems and habitats? So first reason is trained taxonomist. There is now the conventional taxonomy is being replaced by a molecular taxonomy. Even in that aspect, the trained taxonomists are less in number, and only one major research institute working on taxonomy of plants and animals is that is in BSI. Other than that, of course, many universities, regional colleges, they are working, but the number of taxonomists are very, very less. They are very, I can say, endangered species. They are very, very, very less in number. The reason could be the job opportunities, avenues for career is very, very poor in India for taxonomists, and funding is also very less, and institutions building is very poor as for marine and coastal studies are concerned. Gujarat, it has the longest coastline of 1,663 kilometers, but the university is teaching marine science, marine biology is only one. Only one university, Bhavna University, offers MSc Master's course in marine science. Other than that, now they have started one bachelor's in marine science in Kutch University. So, very poor number of taxonomists, very lesser number of research institutions, lesser number of organizations working on taxonomy. could be the reason why the reporting of species in Indian waters in coastal and marine side is poor. Next. Next slide. Next slide, please. Oh, okay. So this is the punchline we used to quote in all seminars and symposiums. Sea is the ultimate sin for all our environmental sin on land. I think it is true. It is getting worse day by day. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Hello, good afternoon,
Yes.
sir. Sivaran, sir. I am Dr. Palsamy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you for your, actually, we have to thank you. So, such a wonderful and most informative talk you have delivered today regarding the coastal lines of Gujarat with a particular reference to Kutch. So, the different kinds of the marine ecosystems and the biodiversity, the threats recently posed on the biodiversity of that area, and climatically how the area is getting significance. So all the area you have touched, sir, it is quite informative, and the people like us who are working all the way along with the mountains and other terrestrial plants here. So it is very new information. Even the ship trekking, we came to know that destruction of shipyards, the ship in particularly in countries like Asia, like India. So the Western countries avoid pollution in their coastal area, and they are dumped here, and our biodiversity, their valuable services are getting destroyed. So policymakers should take care about this one, and hereafter these kinds of activities through this course we will recommend to higher authorities definitely, sir. So these kinds of activities are posing great threat to our valuable, probably the endemic organisms. So once they have been vanished out means definitely we won't get the genetic material again. So it is very precious. So we are in position to protect all these kinds of organisms in coastal area. So your lecture, it is an eye-opening one. So our young researchers definitely in future will take care of that kind of biodiversity available in marine regions. So very much thankful to share. Very, very thank you. Thank you for your wonderful talk.
Thank you, sir, for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Is there any questions from the participant side? You can kindly ask, sir. Or else you can post in the chat box. The session is open now for discussion. Sir, there is no questions from the participant side, sir. Shall we move to the next thing, sir?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, especially the organizers and Professor Paulraj and Palsamy and Dr. Karthika, the coordinator. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Divakaran, sir, for explaining well about the marine diversity of Gujarat and sharing your valuable time with us. We are much privileged to know the elaborative information about ecosystem diversity of coastal Gujarat and about the life forms in the ocean. And we are very much delighted to know about the measures given by you to improve the biodiversity research. Thank you once again, sir. Water fuels life. It's the driving force of all nature. Never take it for granted. I heartily invite Dr. P. Revati Ma'am, Assistant Professor, Department of Botany, Kongunadu Arts and Science College, Coimbatore, to render the vote of thanks. Please, ma'am.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, yes.
A warm good evening, everyone. A happy Teachers' Day for all the teachers who gathered here. And it is my great pleasure to be connect with you all to deliver the words of gratitude in this fifth day of short-term course on biodiversity. At the outset, I like to thank our Honorable President, Dr. M. Arichami sir, and Secretary and Director of our college, Dr. C. A. Vasuki Madam, for their inspiration and support to conduct this program. I wish to express my sincere thanks to our Principal, Dr. M. Lakshmanasamy sir, for his constant support and encouragement for conducting this program. At most importantly, on behalf of our Kongunadu Arts and Science College and organizing team of Department of Botany, we must mention our deep sense of gratitude to the today's resource person, Dr. G. A. Divakaran sir, for his informative talk on coastal and marine biodiversity of Gujarat. Thank you so much, Divakaran sir. Today, you spent your precious time with us and effectively shared your knowledge to the young minds. Thank you so much, sir. And I extend my gratitude to Dr. S. Palsamy sir, Dean R&D, Dr. S. R. Madan Sankar sir, Dean Academics, and our department senior professors, Dr. V. Balasubramaniam sir and Dr. N. Nagarajan sir, for their encouragement and guidance. And I would like to thank our head of the department, Dr. K. Tenmuli Madam, for her motivation and support for conducting this program in successful manner. Here, I would like to give the appreciation and gratitude to the organizing secretary of the program, Dr. K. Karthia Madam, and co-coordinators, organizing team of the Department of Botany for making this program with grand success. Knowledge is power, and our knowledge can be improved if we have constant enthusiasm. I would like to wish all the enthusiastic participants of our institution and other institutions who are expanding their knowledge through this program. And I thank all of you for your active participation and cooperation to make this program with success. Let us show our gratitude to the nature. There is no doubt it reciprocates in tenfolds. And I feel very proud to being a part of this program, and I thank to giving me the opportunity. Thank you all.
Announcement. Day after tomorrow, Monday, 7/9/2020, will be the 6th day on this short-term course at 3 to 4 p.m. on the respective link on Google Meet and YouTube. Dr. Arun Kumar Roy Mahato, Senior Scientist and Head, Terrestrial Ecology Division, Gujarat Institute of Desert Ecology, Gujarat, will be explaining us about the dryland ecology and its biodiversity, and all the participants are requested to join the meet before 15 minutes to 3 p.m. Thank you. Have a nice weekend. Let's all meet on Monday.